Hello and welcome again to another edition of Ask the Experts here on City News 570. I'm joined today by Faisal Susiwala. Faisal is now ranked the #1 individual REMAX agent in the world, and he's off to Las Vegas tomorrow, Sunday, to pick up some hardware. Congratulations, Faisal. That's awesome news.
Thank you very much, Brock.
When you get together in Vegas, are people coming from Remax all around the world? Is it a North American thing? Where do you see your friends coming from?
Yes, it's an international conference. I forget the numbers, but I want to say close to 6,000 agents from around the globe will be there, and it's a 4 day conference. Lots of networking, lots of new ideas, and getting amped up to learn a little bit more about real estate.
And hopefully a little bit of downtime as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna hopefully hit a few nice restaurants and enjoy some good company.
Well, congratulations again. That's great news, Faisal. Listeners, if you're interested in any of the information we discuss over the next hour, you can reach out to Faisal directly. You can start your journey at homeshack.com. You can call him 519-624-5555 or email Faisal@homeshack.com. Before you get on that plane, why don't we take a look at how the market's been doing? We're turning the corner. We're coming right into the spring season. And what can we expect, Faisal?
Well, the market is doing very well right now. Right after the March 6th rate pause and the anticipated April 10th rate pause that we're expecting from the Bank of Canada, we will see higher selling prices, which is great and welcome news from sellers. We have had a little bit of a pause for the last 5, 6 months now. So all that pent-up demand is in the marketplace now. Buyers are out there. Multiple offers are back in the marketplace right now. And my advice really to sellers is get your homes ready. If you're thinking about selling in this calendar year, this is going to be a great 3 or 4 months with the uptick in the market. And of course, historically, the spring market is always the best market to sell your home in. So take advantage of the good weather, the good mood, the good market, the rate pause. So all signs are headed in the right direction for sellers. From the buyer's perspective, it's important to consider purchasing sooner than later in this season, essentially because the market reacts to news, and the news that's coming out is going to be positive, that we're expecting rate cuts later on this year, rate pauses to continue, rates certainly are not expected to go up. And a lot of buyers are still concerned about, well, it's 5.9% or 6.1% for my mortgage. True, but if you lock in for 2 years, take advantage of the lower prices, the the difference is huge when you look at the savings or the appreciation. So what I mean by that is, yes, you may end up paying $4,000 or $5,000 more in interest costs over the next couple of years because you locked in at a higher rate. So I'm not recommending locking in on a 5 year rate, lock in on a 2 or 3. But if you could save $100,000 on your purchase price, because we have seen from the past that as soon as the rates go down, those bidding wars are there. There's not a lot of thoughtful processes involved in purchasing a home, and people pay ridiculously over asking. And then you're going to be caught up in that whole frenzy. So don't do what the herd is doing. Do what the herd isn't doing, and then get the benefit of that.
And you've talked about this before. For years the idea was if you're looking at a mortgage, look at that variable mortgage. But right now, 2 year fixed is probably still the best way to go.
2 years, 3 years, yeah, depending on what your risk tolerance is. But all the signs do point towards the direction of rate cuts. And
Mhm.
we're expecting that this time next year, we could see up to a 1% less interest rate next year. And if that actually ends up happening, we know the prices are going to be skyrocketing again because pent-up demand, population growth, immigration, all of the stuff that's going on, and just not enough housing starts in the market either.
And we've got that. It's sort of the perfect storm. We've got hundreds of thousands of people kind of chomping at the bit, wanting to get into the market. And and they kind of look over both shoulders and think, well, this is my time to jump because if I wait any longer, we've talked about that idea of staying on the sidelines, and now's not the time to do that.
No, it's not. It absolutely isn't.
We know that in early March we had the everything stayed the same, and what was kind of the idea, and you're thinking the same thing is going to be happening on April the 10th with the Bank of Canada announcement. What does that mean for people if they're looking at rates, and what does that mean for you if you're a buyer or a seller as well?
So the banks may actually ahead of that even start adjusting their lending rate. So get qualified, lock in at the lower rates, and then ride that wave as long as you can, because up to and including the closing date, as the rates come down, you could get the benefit of that lower rate. So for a buyer, it's certainly very, very advantageous to get out there, start shopping now. Yes, inventory levels are a little bit lower right now. So they don't have a lot of prime pickings, but come mid-April, early May into June, that's where you're going to see that massive amount of audience that's looking to buy. And then the prices are going to go up. We've already seen a 7 to 8% uptick since November. So
Mhm.
sales are up huge. I think it's 12 or 15% sales are up. But prices are up 7 to 8% just in our region over what they were back in November. So the homes that we were expecting to sell for, $800,000 are getting closer to $900,000 today.
And it seems to me that a for sale sign is going to go on a lawn, and it's not going to stay there very long these days. So it seems to be that you're not waiting weeks and weeks necessarily to make that actually come true.
Yeah, so last week I had a home on Carter Crescent. I had 86 viewings on it. I had 20 offers on it, and it sold for $125,000 above its asking price.
Wow.
So there's a sign, and I can remember, well, it was before February of 2022 that we saw that amount of activity, that amount of offers, and we're starting to see, that $100,000 benchmark being broken. We saw $300,000 over asking, 2 years ago. We haven't seen that for a while. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen instantly, but I am suggesting that don't be surprised if you see $150,000 over asking coming back into the market.
Good information to know always. And we know also, Faisal, this time of the year, it's tax season. If we find that we are in that group of people that have started either because of COVID or maybe prior to COVID as well too, and we work from home, I know you've got some inside scoops for us. What are some of the things we should be thinking about when we're doing our taxes if we happen to be one of those people that work from home?
Well, first of all, I cringe when tax season comes because it's the time to pay them. That's when you have to pay your partner, the great government of
That's right.
Canada. They're your
That's right.
partner. You got to pay them their share, right? So that is definitely happening. But a lot of us are working from home. A lot of us are required to work from home
Mm.
by your employer. And that's good news if you are working from home and you're required to work from home, because first of all, the employer has to fill out a detailed form called a T2200. And that's for employees to be able to deduct their employment expenses, including their home office expenses for 2023. The To be eligible for that home office expense, the employee has to be working from home, and they must qualify for those expenses, such as, well, first of all, you have to be at least 50% of your work must be from home, and it must be for at least 4 consecutive weeks of that year. Okay, so that's important to know. The workspace can only be used to earn employment income, and it must be used regularly and continually for in-person meetings with clients or customers. So that's important to again realize that it's just not because you're just sitting at home on Zoom all day that you qualify. And if the employee only worked part of the year from home, then they can only claim that expense for part of the year, not for the full year. So you can't say, well, my heat hydro. So again, those, there's so many little details. And again, I'm not an accountant. I'm encouraging everyone to speak in detail with their accountant, especially if you're a commission earning salesperson or an employer who has or an employee who has been requested to work from home. Now, the eligible home expenses are interesting. if you're salaried or commission, you could include electricity, heat, water, the utility portion of your condominium fees, if your utilities are included in your condominium. Also your home internet, maintenance and minor repair costs, any rent paid for your house or your apartment. So those are all eligible expenses as per the CRA. And again, speak to your accountant about those things. The eligible home office expense for commission employees is a little bit different. So if
Okay.
you're not a paid salaried employee, you, in addition to what I've just mentioned, you can also write off your insurance, your property taxes, your lease on your cell phone, your lease on your computer, laptops, tablets. So these are all reasonable related expenses to earn commission income if you're a commission salesperson. So of course, these are all things that many people just forget about or
Mhm.
take for granted that they're paying. So this is the time of year to really, and I know a lot of us shy away from calling an accountant because we don't want the fees or whatever to get consultation. But when you look at the amount of money that you may be paying out in lost benefits, probably worth that consulting fee, at least with your accountant. Now, employees cannot claim mortgage interest, principal mortgage payments, furniture, capital expenses, things like replacing windows, floors. So, don't be aggressive in what you're claiming. Be reasonable. Look at the amount of, and you could do your calculations based on how much space am I actually using up in my home? Is it 100 square feet?
Absolutely.
And then run that through a formula to make sure you do it right. And the good news is that if your employer needs to fill out that form and you're working from home, you don't necessarily need to go back in. You can have your employer do it electronically for you as well.
So grab your calculator, dial a phone number, get that accountant on the line, and you got a bit of homework to do. But Faisal's going to point you in the right direction. We're coming up on a break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about rent controls. So stay with us here on City News 570. Welcome back to the show. My guest today, Faisal Susiwala, who is now ranked as the #1 individual Remax agent in the world. And he has time to speak with us today. Listeners, you've got a chance to chat with this guy as well, too. You can always reach out to Faisal yourself. Start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or email Faisal@homeshack.com. We joked in the first section about heading off to Vegas tomorrow, Faisal. I don't want to take up a lot of your time today because I know you need to pack those things up. But we've got the rest of this hour to talk about a few topics, and we're able to jump around a little bit. And when I went through the pre-show notes, there was a couple of things that jumped out at me specifically. I've never heard of a bear trust, and I'm hoping you can walk us through that. And also maybe we'll spend a few minutes to talk about rent control as well too. I'm going to turn things over to you when it comes to what is a bear trust.
So again, like yourself, I had not heard about it either until my accountant called me last week and said, "Hey, we need to deal with a bear trust." I'm like, "What are we talking about? This sounds like that UHT call, which sounds like an infection that we were told about back in September. That was the underused home underused house tax, I think, is what the
That's
other
right.
other acronym means. And now a bear trust is interesting because many of us may be involved in a bear trust and we don't even know that we have a bear trust.
Okay.
But again, the good government of Canada and CRA has decided that we should do yet another filing because our life is not complicated enough without doing these filings. So we should do more filings. So bear trust is when someone legally owns an asset, but it technically belongs to someone else. So these
Okay.
include like things like financial accounts for minors. So if you're holding a bank account for your children in trust, that's a bear trust. Joint bank accounts between family members, parents who have co-signed mortgages for their children, or even silent partnerships. So let's just say, Brock, you and I own a property together, and your name is on the title of that property,
Right.
but I am a silent partner and I've given you some cash to invest, but my name's nowhere to be seen on the title or on the mortgage. Well, that's actually a bare trust. So
Okay.
these are all things that we take for granted. We may have all kinds of handshake deals out there with
Right.
people that hasn't been sort of registered. So now the government is saying that you are required to file a T3 trust income tax and information return for 2023.
Okay.
Now, the deadline for this is April 2nd. So it's right after we air here.
Right.
I would send an email to my accountant or to my or next phone call on the next business day should be to your accountant because April 2nd is creeping up. And if your accountant hasn't brought this to your attention, and I thank my friends at BDO for doing that for me, then they are certainly going to be in a lot of trouble. And that tax, which you may be assuming that April 30th is the deadline, but it's not. It's April 2nd for this Bear Trust. And then failure to pay this can result at $25 per day late filing fee
Oh boy.
to a minimum of $100 and a maximum of $2,500. So you're in for $100 if you're late anyways. Again, speak to your lawyers, speak to your accountants, get on this. And I'm glad we're speaking today because we still have a few days if we miss this one item.
And I would think too, Faisal, and you mentioned that idea of parents co-signing mortgages for their children. That might be happening more so these days, where we know it's hard for young people to get their foot in the door, and maybe they go to the bank of mom and dad to start off. You want to make sure that you're not heading into any sort of problems where you're going to be having to pay if you're those late penalties sort of thing. So pay attention and make sure that if your accountant doesn't know about it, well, you heard about it when Faisal and I talked about it, so that you're pointing in the right direction. That's good information to know. The other thing, and they don't necessarily go together, but this was another topic that I thought was pretty important for us to take a look at: the idea of rent control. And the basic question is, does rent control work? And I wanted to get your opinion on that.
It's kind of a loaded question because it's a yes
Mhm.
and no. Back in the early 90s, there used to be rent control that was put on the address. So the if you were charging $1,200 per month for this apartment and that tenant moved out, the next tenant also paid $1,200 per month. You were not permitted because the rent was basically assigned to the address, not to the individual. So that's part of that rent control idea. And now, of course, there's talks of bringing that back. It of it will definitely limit profitability for landlords. Okay, so now that may seem like a great idea, and rent control may seem like a great idea, but it could the unintended consequences of rent control could be fewer units being built, less people wanting to rent out their properties. And it aims to stabilize housing costs for tenants. There's no question, and it prevents sudden increases in rent. It ensures housing affordability. So those are all the good things of rent control. It could preserve the existing affordable housing, so you're not seeing drastic increases in rent. And it protects just unjust evictions.
Right.
There's better resolution options than there are now. So there's some merit to it. I'm not saying it's all bad. However, that can create disincentives for landlords to maintain or
Mhm.
invest in rental properties, potentially leading to a decline in the quality of housing stock as well. Because if you know you're not able to increase the rent or you're not able to renovate the property once the tenant moves out, what is the incentive for you to go in there and paint and put, change the bathrooms and freshen the property up because you're saying, I'm not going to get a better return. Chances are you probably just say, I'm going to sell this property because I don't have any incentive. The developers are going to say, well, wait a minute. If you're putting rent control on us, we don't want to build new rental housing or convert existing properties into rental units, despite of the tax benefits of building rental units. In one hand, you can't give a benefit, and the other hand, take it away from them. So you're just
Mhm.
vicious cycle again. And this seems to be the trend that the government has had in a long time. In one hand, they're giving you something that's great, beautiful headlines. but in the other hand, they've taken something away from you. So it's a short-term relief for tenants, I believe, but I think policymakers need to carefully consider the potential long-term consequences before they start putting these rent controls back into place.
And I would think too. I'm not a landlord, but I would think in this day and age right now, it may not be the easiest thing to make a profit as a landlord, and you're squeezing. And we've talked about the in the past where maybe you own an apartment building and you have built rapport with all of those people that you're renting to, uh, and you want to be able to offer incentives or upgrades, but that money's got to come from somewhere, right? And there's only so much good you can do kind of from the goodness of your heart, but you also want to make sure that people are saying, well, okay, well, this place is this is what it's worth. You get what you pay for, and if you're wanting more and you want it to be upgraded and all those things, there's going to be a cost involved for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, landlords, like some landlords are being squeezed unfairly as it is. Tenants are refusing to move out of the properties. They're making it very difficult for them to sell these properties. So, and then they're taking them to the LTB, which takes months and months to get a
Right.
hearing. So they're already under a lot of pressure. So when you take all the incentives away from being a landlord, we're going to have a huge shortage in available affordable housing that'll hit the market. And certainly no developer is going to want to build under rent control.
Good information to have as well, too. We do need to take a break. We'll get an update from the City News 570 News Center as well. When we come back, housing starts. So where are we right now and where do we need to be? Stay with us here on City News 570. Welcome back to the show. My guest today, top real estate broker and author of the book, The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, Faisal Susiwala joins us. That book continues to be ranked on Amazon's bestseller list, by the way. And if you haven't picked one up for yourself, never better a time than right now. Go get yourself a copy of that book. I've got a copy of it. I keep going back through it. Uh, and I find these little nuggets that I always want to talk to Faisal about them as well too. So we'll get a chance to do that as well. If you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly 519-624-5555 or email Faisal@homeshack.com. We've talked about this in the past, Faisal, and it's a hot button topic, and I know the idea is that it's not going away. In fact, it's getting larger. The idea that the country needs to construct millions of homes in really the next 5 or 6 years. And we have these estimates. We take a look at where we are right now, and those two things aren't lining up. And what seems to be the problem is that we're missing a few key components. But I want to turn things over to you.
Yeah, we need someone who understands and knows how to count because originally we were advised that we need a 1.5 million homes in Canada. That was the
That's right.
number. Then that was upgraded to 3.5 million. Today, it's 5 million. So Canada
Yeah,
needs to construct an additional 5 million housing units by 2030, which far exceeds the previous estimate of 3.5 million. And this gap is attributed to outdated population forecasts. So the actual population is surpassing what the previous projections were. So there was no accounting previously for non-permanent residents in that forecasting. I don't know how we missed 1.5 million people, but
right.
we did.
Yeah.
That's what we missed. We missed all of the non-permanent residents, and we missed like work permits and all those people, students. All of that was not accounted for, and many of the economists, whether they're independent or working for the big banks, all are on the same page as to what is needed. And there's a big concern for sustainability of housing and affordability. And this population growth is just going to continue. So there has to be something. The housing shortage in Canada is not solely due to economic conditions, but it stems from that inadequate planning and
Right.
forecasting. If they gotten that research done right, we probably would have put a lot of checks and balances in ahead of time to address those issues, but they just weren't. Unfortunately, they were missed, and now we're sort of chasing a solution, which I don't really see happening very, very quickly. I think it's extremely unrealistic. I thought 1.5 million homes by 2030 were unrealistic. 3.5 million, definitely didn't think would be accomplished. 5 million, I would say, is virtually impossible between now and the next 6 years to build 5 million homes. Now, when we see the housing starts being so low.
And maybe, we've talked a bit about this as well in the past, that idea of looking at some creative ways when it comes to housing. When you and I were growing up, I think the idea was, the white picket fence and the wraparound porch and the, 3 to 4 bedrooms and you've got your yard and all of those things. When you're talking 5 million, you're not talking 5 million of those homes. You've got to find ways to put up apartment buildings. You've got to put up multi-unit dwellings. You've got to look at in-law suites. You've got to look at we know that local governments have sort of reduced some of the red tape to do things like putting on an addition, putting a tiny home in your backyard. That idea of a home in our minds, I think, has to change. And would you agree with that?
I absolutely do. And you're right, Brock. There's a lot of um, implementation required here. The systems are there, the mandates are there, the execution is not there, the bureaucracy is still there. Again, the frustration continues by builders, developers, homeowners looking for a permit. All of that is continuing. I don't see an efficient process. And look, it's going to take time. It's a learning curve, but I think there has to be some implementation and execution because it's just not happening.
And it'll be interesting in as you said, in the next 5 or 6 years, what this looks like, because that number of 5 million, I can't imagine it going to be going down. We know that it's going to be going the other direction, and looking at what does that mean for people? What is it, and how does that impact everyone on kind of on a daily basis? The other thing that ties in with it as well too, you had given us some numbers prior to the show about what the Canadian Real Estate Association has predicted, what they see is going to be happening in 2024. Maybe you can dive into that a little bit as well too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Faisal, before the show, we had a chance to look at some documents, and the one thing that you had sent our way was the idea of the Canadian Real Estate Association, their predictions for 2024. Maybe you want to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so their predictions right now, they basically rely on a decrease in the interest rates. Okay. And that's so despite the lowest annual sales activity in 2008, the optimism is just due to that pent up demand, population growth. And again, another round of interest rate cuts like we've seen in the past will just ramp things up. So nearly 500,000 residential properties are expected to be sold in 2024. That's an
Wow.
increase of 10% from last year. The national average home price is expected to rise by 2% to 694,000 and change. And prices and homes sales projected to continue climbing right through to 25. So we don't expect any more clawbacks. We don't expect any more slowdowns. And again, that's the low interest rate, the pent up demand, the increase the population, all of that is going to play into this. And this is something that you and I spoke of at quite some length last year, that this is just temporary. What we were noticing last year, and that's where we were encouraging our buyers to like, don't wait for that herd mentality. Everybody's jumping in, let's jump in. You kind of have to go against the grain a little bit. The challenges will continue to remain for the first time home buyers, especially in Ontario, in British Columbia, where the prices remain high and continue to increase. But despite the conservative forecast, the potential market rebound is expected just because of all those factors. I mean, we are not going to see a clawback for a long, long time. Now, having said that, the only caution I'm going to put out there is we may see in the fall a
Okay.
little bit of a dip in the market, essentially because those folks who had mortgages 5 years ago are coming up for renewal. And if they haven't pre-planned their mortgage renewal, if they haven't pre-planned what they're going to do when their payment goes up, there may be some desperate inventory hitting the market at those times. So I'm encouraging my buyers, my sellers to sort of look at the whole picture. Can you afford the payment? Can you afford the rate? Can you afford the renewal? And have those conversations with your bank today to say, look, do I have the option of maybe extending my amortization? Do I have an alternative to this high mortgage payment? I heard somewhere not that long ago that the average homeowner who is renewing at the current rates on the average price point of a home is going to be between $1,500 to $1,800 more per month on their mortgage payment than they were previously accustomed to, because they may have been locked in at 1.9 or 2.5 or 2.9. The renewal is going to be at 6%. And that renewal is going to cause an increase in their mortgage payment. So have some solutions, have some options available to you. And again, don't lock in for a 5-year rate, in my opinion.
And when you look at those numbers and the calculations and everything else as well, we see you saw that increase of a 10% increase in sales, home prices going up. Those numbers they're manageable. What we saw back in February of 2022, that was astronomical. And then, as you said, then we had that clawback. Things are moving in the right direction. Maybe not at the pace that some people would like, but we're not going to be expecting those huge changes that we were seeing. And if you are having to bite the bullet when it comes to that mortgage renewal, as Faisal said, lock in for 2 years, and you're going to have to ride out the storm. We'll take a final break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, the politics of housing. You're listening to Ask the Experts here on City News 570. Welcome back to the show. My guest today has been Faisal Susiwala, also known as the top real estate broker in the world for REMAX. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. We don't often get political, Faisal. I've jokingly mentioned to you in the past that if this whole real estate thing doesn't work out, you should run for politics, but you haven't taken me up on that offer. But all joking aside, if we take a look at the big issue right now, we've talked about it already, that idea of housing affordability here for everyday Canadians. And I know that you had taken some time to look at, well, what does each of the main parties think about this? What are their plans? And I want to turn things over to you, and we can walk through that and have a bit of a chat.
Yeah, I wanted to see what the platform around housing was for each of the four parties and just sort of like look at, okay, who has the best plan here? So the Liberal Party has introduced the Housing Accelerator Fund, a $4 billion initiative aimed at stimulating housing supply in all the major cities,
Right.
encouraging streamlined zoning and permitting process. I don't see it working. I haven't seen it working, not to the point where it should be. And again, it's still early on in the game here, but I think there's a long way to go. And we talked about in our last segment that we're not seeing the amount of units that we need. The
Right.
aim to create 100,000 new middle class homes by 2024 to 2025 through this initiative. Again, it's a very, very aggressive number. The additional measures include that elimination of the GST that we've talked about before for new rental housing. So all good things. And I think all the parties have some great options. The Conservative Party strategy revolves around penalizing big cities that fail to meet home building targets with a requirement for a 15% annual increase in home building. So again, sustainable. I think that's a
Right.
reasonable number. They also propose that elimination of the GST on affordable apartment housing, but restrict the rebate to properties with rents below market value. So there's a little catch there, okay?
Right.
And
Right.
again, aim to expedite home construction by removing the bureaucratic obstacles and mandate that pre-approved permits. Again, everyone's got the right idea. It's execution at the municipal levels that I see failing.
Right.
Um, the NDP prioritizes the construction of more affordable rental and housing by establishing that fast turn funds for co-op, social, and nonprofit housing. So they're more on the social side. Again, huge need for it. They advocate for repurposing the vacant commercials and office buildings, which I really like, into student dorms. And they require post-secondary institutions to have housing plans for their students, which we have heard all over the news. Again, I
Yes.
like that as well. Regardless of which party you support, I think each of the parties have some great ideas. If we can put them all under one banner, it would be fantastic. And if we can implement it, it would be even better. And then we have the Green Party, which aims to double the current social housing stock. Sounds great in principle. I don't know if it's actually viable to do that. They advocate for establishing a guaranteed minimum income to alleviate the poverty and promote affordable housing. Again, sounds good on paper. And the specific initiatives include supporting renters on their pathway to home ownership. Love that idea. If we can get more renters into home ownership gives people hope. Home ownership gives people security, sustainability, a
Absolutely.
future, and the ability to just create something for the next generation. So love that mandate that they have. And they also want to reduce the speculation in the housing market. So, housing has become an investment tool. Housing has become, a vehicle. And we have large corporations that are buying single family homes. And we've talked about that in the past. So I think they want to start restricting that. So again, all of the parties have some great ideas. If we can get all of that under one banner, it would be great.
And you're right. And real estate is now a political tool in a lot of ways as well. So I think what we could do is we could take Faisal Susiwala, we can name him the leader of the real estate party.
Yes.
He just takes all the best ideas. I,
Yes.
you'd, I
Right.
think you and they oh you're a single topic platform, doesn't matter. Everybody needs a place to stay, and Faisal's going to lead us. And he needs a campaign manager. I know a guy, Faisal. We'll get you in touch with him. And when you're ready to sit back and relax and jump into politics, here we can take care of you.
Well,
And I'm only half joking. These are great ideas. And the one thing that we have talked about before that is kind of at the crux of all of this as well too, the idea of, it's great when as both of us have shared this story before, we're both the children of immigrants, where it was important that we go to university and we are lawyers and engineers and all of those things, whereas in fact these days, skilled trades, that's where we need the people.
we absolutely do. And again, like, my parents said, lawyer, doctor, engineer, you pick which one are you going to be, right? Definitely not realtors, but now we're seeing a lot of people wanting to become realtors as well.
That's right.
The good news on the horizon is that there is a surge in the apprenticeship registrations in Canada. The skilled trade applicants are going up. More and more people, it's actually rebounded to surpass pre-pandemic levels. So more people have now enrolled. And this is all important. And it comes back to housing, right? If we have more trades, if we have more electricians, contractors, framers, plumbers, HVAC individuals, this is all going to play into that, helping the industry, bringing down the labor costs. And skilled trades is such a lucrative option right now. Alberta, Quebec, Ontario are leading the trend of getting more and more people into that. And with the aging population, tradespeople are retiring. So this is opening up huge opportunities. And even if a lot of people have the mindset, oh, I don't want to be a plumber, I don't want to be an electrician. I think they're great jobs. I think they pay very well. They're extremely lucrative. I know what it costs me when I call my plumber or electrician, so it's got to be pretty lucrative.
Absolutely.
But if you are business minded and you want to, and I'm talking to the young people out there, if you want to have a business, your dream is to have a business, well, become an electrician, become a plumber, become an HVAC contractor, and then be in the business of that trade and employ others and create a huge business out of it. So there is a lot of opportunity in trades that I think that our younger generation is just, content looking at a computer screen, going that IT route or whatever it may be. But with government incentives, and most importantly, I think it's so important to have efforts to make it inclusive, have initiatives aimed towards encouraging women to enter, offering grants or support programs to encourage certification completion. So it's not about enrolling. Now let's get you to the finish line. Let's help you get to the finish line. And here's an incentive. Here's a grant once you finish your process. And also consider, we've talked about immigration a lot. Let's
Mhm.
consider targeting immigration towards addressing the labor shortages and bringing in either skilled trades from abroad or bringing in immigrants who are willing to enroll in programs that are skilled trades. And that is just essential, in my opinion, to create. It's going to help the housing crisis because you're going to have more trades, more people. Labor costs will start going down, and availability will go up. We got to push out 5 million homes, right? That's not going to happen on the limited skill trades that we have in our country right now.
And you bring up a good point. That idea if you build your skill set and the two words skilled trade. Once you have that trade, no one's going to be able to take that away from you. You are going to be a known asset. And you're going to be able to say, okay, well, you know what? I'm the plumber, and you call me when there is an emergency. That's the time that you show up, or when something really needs to be taken care of right away. You find something that you're passionate about. We talk about this all the time with students. That idea of, if you're going into something for the money, or you're going into something because it brings you joy, you're spending 8 to 10 to 12, maybe 14 hours a day doing something. It better be something you want to do. Doesn't matter about how much money you're going to be making. If you are just not enjoying those moments and you're regretting your decisions, start making those decisions a little bit earlier. The one thing that we've talked a bit about as well, too, that idea of OYAP, right? The Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, getting kids at 15, 16, 17 to at least get their foot in the door, see if this is something they want to do. And always a great opportunity for kids out there. Faisal, I wish we had 3 hours to talk today because we always have a lot of fun and a lot of things to talk about as well too. I know you got to go. You got to pack your bags. You got a big trip to Vegas to pick up the hardware. And congratulations again to you. That's awesome news. And I don't, as we've said before, I've got 24 hours in my day. I'm pretty sure you've got about 36 in your day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on your show and talking to you as always.
Always a pleasure to have you on and to chat with you as well too, Faisal. That was Faisal Susiwala, the #1 real estate broker for Remax. Also, recently published author of The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, and someone lucky for us. He had some time before he hits the takes to the air to talk to us and share his thoughts about the current real estate market. Big thank you to our technical producer Devin Robertson again for pushing all the right buttons. And thanks to you, listeners, for joining us. You've been listening to Ask the Experts here on City News 570.